here.
Live?
Yep.
Oh. What are we gonna do today, John?
I had brought up this thing on Stoicism that I was listening to this morning.
Good, talk to me about it.
One of the aspects that was being discussed is inevitable change.
Mm.
And I think that if we resist change more than embrace it, we produce more suffering than is necessary, more suffering than one will experience by merely just feeling things in the moment. We project a future, a false, idealized, imperfect future that becomes worse than what may actually happen than if we just
Very often.
stay in the limited amount of suffering.
So
that
what,
we-
is there a law that is being violated? I mean, you can look at it this way, there are a lot of ways to talk about it. Is there a law that's being violated when a person resists change? Yeah, because recently I was rereading this kind of thing. The philosophers, whose names are legion, will tell you that not only is the external changing all the time, but this is changing too.
Mm.
So that there is flux, nothing but flux.
Right.
So the ancient Greeks would come up, and one was said flux, the other said fire, Thales said water, but it's always roiling and boiling. The very nature of physical existence is at a level of energy, true?
Mm-hmm.
Where these entities are speeding around at speeds at least as fast as light, and maybe even contradicting that, like being in two places at once, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it's all flux. It's roiling and boiling is the way I put it. And because we're part of it, we don't feel it,
Right.
you know, but we are made of the same energy, and it's still the same. I go back to the Buddha. He said you're on fire, and it creates desire. On fire with desire, you are grasping. And if you add Sartre's version of consciousness to the idea of fire, you realize it's a pure emptiness, le néant, the nothingness, he called it. And he's so dead on because it's adaptable to anything. It just watches everything. It goes. It's watching the flux all the time.
Mm.
It's attached to it. It needs it in order to exist, because if there were no phenomena, so no objects, then what would it see?
Mm.
And what would it be? There would be nothing that would inform it, so it wouldn't have a mind like your mind, full of thought and insight. But it simply would be denuded of all that. And so that's basically death. And so that's ruled out as anything. So this thing exists, this consciousness exists always in this condition of flux, and it's always seeking some kind of stability. It's always because it wants to grasp the next pleasure, and every pleasure wants eternity, said so many philosophers.
Right.
So
Always trying to crystallize
that,
like a moment. Right?
especially if a person has been brought up in a way where he or she needs control,
Mm.
because there's a deep-seated anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Control freaks will want you to smile at them all the time.
Mm.
I've known, how many people have I known teaching all those years? And it was like being in a lab under some conditions. Anyway, so by our nature, we are condemned to be free of everything, because we tear away from it all the time. He calls it the French recul nihilisant, which meant annihilating recoil. Consciousness goes from one thing to another, and in order to get past that and to go to this, it has to expel it in a certain way. Now, when a person lives his or her life this way, this is real problem. This is the person who goes from one person to another, to another, to another, because that desire for stability and control applies at every level to the immediacy of my control of that. I'll tell you why in a moment. To whatever else idea of control I have in this world where anything can happen at any time. My control of that is simply to recognize it. So it makes it, it's familiar. Suppose I couldn't recognize it. Suppose I had Alzheimer's disease. You know what I mean? And would I be deeply disturbed by the fact that I can't identify and name anything around me? I don't even know what these things are for. I mean, that gets to be scary for a lot of people. Not many people can go into that any more than it would be capable for any of us to go into like a Tibetan hell, where everything is created by your own mind, and to fully realize that, to become totally awake in the dream where you're being tormented and tortured and all that, to awaken in there, you transcend it, because it's a dream. Because it says it right in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It says this, when you realize this is all a product of your own brain, you're free, but it takes you a while to get out of Sambhogakaya, I think it's called.
Yeah, because it's so convincing.
Oh yeah, a story can get attached. The brilliance of the human mind, a story can be attached and it can become an archetypal story. And anybody who hears it with intelligence, like some of your people, the woman that you mention all the time, very intelligent person, this will penetrate deep to within, from the top of the skull on down. The whole thing, it sounds like it's based on a terrible negative. What's that? A realization of your temporary nature, your nature that is by its own function, it's transitory, that you're constantly rolling with this. This is why in Zen they talk about becoming the feather on the wind, or the cork in the stream. It's very difficult to do it. Because basically you're shedding the wants and the insecurities and the fears and all that, and you can't just throw that stuff away. You got to see it. You got to exorcise it.
Work with it, right? It's
you
work.
Gotta work. It's work.
The work, and then some other things too.
It's all lumped under the work for me.
And also that work, I have found, starts with relationship to oneself and not fucking lying to oneself.
There you go, John. Yep, that's
I've not
that's
only
my point.
I've not only come to understand that, but to like feel it, you know. Yeah, there's so much light to be shed.
And if you think that once you've seen something, you don't need to see any more.
Yeah. Right.
Then
you're done living.
Yeah, then you're done. Then you're done. You bounced your head off your own ceiling, and you're still inside of a house. No, you just stay open. Everything can change, and it carries too not just an intellectual understanding. The intellect is informed by the body, the condition of the body,
Right.
in conjunction with conditions that are external. So here's this constantly this thing in flux that's not changing completely, but is undergoing all kinds of internal dynamics. The energy systems, especially if they're not all running correctly, and they're going down different pathways that they shouldn't. Anyway, right? So, what can you do about all this? You can just see how this creates a drama, and if you look at the biggest addiction of the human race, which is what? The need for drama. I'm going to say that dogmatically.
Yeah, but that's part of developing the ego, keeping the ego alive, right?
Because the ego is always in a condition of drama. So it loves drama, it likes to watch drama.
It can only exist in juxtaposition to an opposing force, right?
Yeah, or even take it up, you're exactly right, but take it up, make it more existential. Make it, put it into the form of a person or people.
Yeah.
That's where our problems come from.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can create scenarios of good and bad people, and you can
Mhm.
populate your story with them.
Yes, I was listening to a video earlier on that actually. Heroes, mythology,
It
all
all-
kinds of mythologies. But things that the thing about, if I'm using the term correctly, mythos and whether or not it is true that a Hercules existed or Jesus Christ existed, there are things to be pulled from those stories that are incredibly important, that truly exist and replicate over time, that can be learned from. You can pull wisdom out of those things, out of those stories. I never had an appreciation years ago for fiction until I started to look into why those archetypal things keep popping up in people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that you had mentioned to me years ago. The archetypes. Right?
Yeah, as I write my stuff, archetypes are in abundance.
Mm.
I mean the ones, true, deep, fundamental archetypes. One of my favorites to use in more than one book is the archetype of Ouroboros.
Yeah. The
snake swallowing its own tail. Now, for those people who don't know, it's an archetype, it's a mythological vision of the human race actually regenerating itself. And thus, in the eyes of people, it's considered to be a benign archetype.
Mm.
I don't see it quite that way.
Right.
I see the dark side of it, and I've used it under various circumstances. I made it the symbol of my vampire in the vampire myth.
Meaning it can represent a negative aspect on immortality, a negative aspect of constant reincarnation stuck to a limited existence.
I'll give it away. I'll give away my book, even though you get to it through various dramas. But basically, I've got my thespian lecturing his audience of 1,200 people whom he just released from hypnotic trance while they watched his version of Dracul. And he explains to them that everything that they saw was the creation of their own imagination, being tripped off by his visuals on the stage, and what they love about all this, they are all. I even asked them the question: how many of you are dedicated to Dracula? How many of you want to be bitten? And a lot of the women would, if they were honest, would tell you that. I mean, going back into the late '60s when it became a big popular thing on Broadway.
Vampires.
Yeah, the vampire played a great vampire.
Yep.
Women were being interviewed all over the place, and they were just in love with the idea of they would love to be bitten by him.
Mm.
You know, they would they'd give up that, whatever the hell they think they're giving up, just to have sex with that, because it represents such a passion for them.
Right. A complete infatuation.
Yes.
Like a deep.
Yes, even though
Totally.
he's a monster that'll take their lives,
Yeah.
he's valuable because he represents the greatest passion for them. I mean,
Immortalizing
Yeah.
and crystallizing the idea of perfection personified within another person.
yeah, the vampire is an archetype,
Yeah.
as I've explained, and I was getting to something else about it. Let's go back to the archetype of Ouroboros.
Yep.
In the book, I just reversed the name. I called it Cereburo, which is Ouroboros spelled backwards, okay? And it becomes the symbol of the entire state, which is run by this genius of geniuses. A monster genius because of the way he was brought up, an absolute spectacular genius. His father was a 7.5 foot tall, powerful warrior, the greatest warrior in the entire hemisphere. One man who could just knock, an army could come at him and they would just fall in front of him, hand to hand, sword to sword. But he was born a scrawny little thing, the 13th of brothers, from a woman that had been kidnapped and raped and turned into his home hearth mother of all his children. So he had all these other, he had 12 other boys, and they're all big and beefy and strong and violent like him. And then this little thing comes along, he's going to take it out into the forest and just leave it for the coyote, the wolves. But the mother gets him to change his mind, but he puts the stigma on him. He says, all right, but let him live, but nobody does anything. Don't ever touch him, don't show him a moment of compassion, blah, blah, blah. Just, you make his life into just indifference and crap. Nobody's supposed to care about it. The brothers are fine with it. They have no values of it. The mother secretly has to hold back her love for the child, lest they kill him in front of her. So he's raised like that, but he is a malicious being. And because of his terrible experiences, he lives in a world of fantasy. I mean, he becomes a schizoid right away, because they would break his arm or something like that, for the fun of it, just snap his arm. Okay, so he didn't even show pain when his brother broke his arm, because by that time he had withdrawn from his life. He was the perfect example of the mind-body split that is talked about by R.D. Laing and Alexander Lowen, and people who leave the body. Lowen would call them schizoids, dead to the feelings and in need of gratification, but it all becomes symbolic through ego. Okay? But the body cannot feel, and so this can become a terrible sadist who tortures people in order to feel something. That's why the sadist does this, because he or she is in need to feel, and feels through the pain of the other, the victimization of the other. Too much of a coward to impose it on himself, except unless the great sadist meets a greater sadist. That's how that works. That's how that works. So there's always some more. There you have the authoritarian dynamic, if you want to call it that. But it's always the inferior in relationship to the superior. It's basically what it is. And therefore all the stuff that goes into the heart of the inferior concerning the superior. I kiss your ass, but I like to tear your heart out. Quietly he says that. Or he feels it. Or if he doesn't feel it, it'll erupt every once in a while, be shocked at like imagery, dreams, things like that. And so you basically have this monster of a being who is so brilliant that he's taking complete control of his world, his gigantic island.
What was his name? Regianus.
Regianus, the great, the little king they called him. And he survived, and during that time, because he was so repressed, so separated from his body, as I said, he fantasized, and one night he's visited by a demon in his dream. And the demon tries to convince him that he can free him if he gives him all his hate. Hate me. Hate what you hate in them. Give it to me. Give me the hate. So he creates him out of his hate. Isn't that I thought it was rather clever. And I think it's probably valid.
Yeah.
Yeah, you create this being like you do.
You
The
manifest.
human race, in my opinion, has created Satan.
Yeah.
You know, we created, and now, you know, he's our scapegoat, but he's getting even with us. Because now we made him real. That's a possibility. I mean, it's fooling around possibility.
Right.
But, so, I mean, we have a self-destructive nature.
Right.
Where does it come from? Maybe he whispers. What is he? He's the dark side. And so this guy is the dark side of everybody. He is the ultimate selfish being. Because he learned to survive through creating a monstrous force that he liked to call his demon. He used to talk to him, but now it doesn't talk to him, it just pushes him. At some point he realizes he's not being free, that this thing has been controlling his life, all his life. And with it, however, I mean, what choice would he have? It developed into a powerful force such that on one day when he was about 6 years old, he surprised his father and he said, "Father, look at me." Never talk to the father. I'm gonna swat him away. And before he could do it, he froze his brain with this demonic, what would you call it? It's
Telekinetic power.
It's a kinetic power.
Telepathic.
That telepathically,
Mhm.
like an immediate,
Yeah.
like as the hand goes up, it's there.
Mhm.
And it's just a malevolence, like all it's needed is the intention.
Right.
And there it is, the slave, the intention, boom, and
Right.
like lightning through the whole body into the brain.
Right. Yeah.
And you saw the beginning of the book when I had him kill a whole bunch of guys at the
Yeah.
very beginning.
Yeah.
He used that. He has fun with it.
I really think it's well written. That was one of my favorites that he wrote.
Yeah.
Only because the subjects in combination with the colorful way that you were projecting it on.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Yeah.
It had a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah, it had layers to it.
Easy, yeah, layers. Thank you. I appreciate that. You wouldn't be interested in buying it though, would you?
I think these guys probably would. We should publish that at some point in time.
Really,
This
I've
book's
been
just
through a
waiting
lot
to
of
be
it.
published, by the way. This is one of his books, Narcissus and the Vampire Myth.
Yeah.
So we were talking about control and stoicism and change. So I never brought up the subject of control. The control you had brought up. Control is you're imposing and resisting change. You're trying to overpower what is happening.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I can imagine it would come out of your milieu there, because you are thinking in terms of power and strength and all this and that.
Yeah.
And I think that struggle that you're really referring to never really goes away. It just takes on different forms, and I think many of us do not know how to successfully deal with it. I think we just give in and we go along and go along.
Yeah.
So I would applaud anybody like yourself, make your decisions when you're younger. Don't fall into traps that so many people fall into, because you're dealing with change. I mean, you said it yourself a long time ago, but I won't repeat it. I don't want people to think of you as some kind of marital cynic or something like that. But it's really true. If the aesthetic ideal is a very powerful motivator in relationships, one has to realize that no matter how beautiful is the partner, when you wake up in the morning after a number of years, that partner is just another person. The beauty has somehow been seen so many times that the familiarity of it makes it prosaic.
Right.
Unfortunately.
This is a tremendous problem for many people I know. Many people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, my generation too. People get married on the basis of good looks.
Right.
Wow, isn't that amazing? You think about that. But I would point out, if people want to take a look at the superior, during a long period of time, the most handsome guy in the world, and a real good guy, by the way, good person, good citizen, cares about the environment, all that, smart guy, but anyway, Robert Redford, right? Big time actor, one of the best names, because he was a handsome, super handsome guy, and he was a brilliant director. He did Ordinary People, which I used to use in my classroom in psychology to show the psychological drama that he was producing. I would show it every day, and then we talk about what we just saw. It was a beautiful piece of psychodrama. Fairly simple, and yet quite realistic. Anyway, you never saw it? Too bad. Education. Anyway, here he is, like every year probably, the most handsome man in the world. But now if you look at him, he's all wrinkled. And if some kid never saw him from before, and look at this old wrinkled guy, he would no longer be the spectacular god, would he? Not for most of them. So, what in the world are we trying to preserve? I mean, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but I know so many narcissists, and unfortunately several of them are women, who actually want to hang on to their looks as if they were always going to be beautiful. And I don't dismiss it or anything like that. I understand it. They are very, very dependent upon somehow their appearance in this world. And you can lay that at the feet of men, But you can lay that at the feet of women at the same time. We're all complicit in this thing over which we have no real control. I mean, that comes from very primitive times. I remember one football player, great all-pro football player who was always having sexual reunions and with only beautiful women. He said, I don't want any ugly women, I don't want any ugly kids. And in fact, he's probably speaking a primary truth.
Yeah. That's a hell of an Ouroboros.
Ouroboros, to me, I've used it so many different places. It's not just one. If it's an archetype, you can plug it into a lot of different situations.
That genetic coding that you were just talking about is what has replicated our species to be as healthy and intelligent as we've come to be at this point in time.
Yeah.
And so it's
Sure.
not that it's terrible that exists,
No, I understand.
but it's definitely a friggin' driving factor.
Yeah, and
Right?
it has its dark side, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's just a fact. It's just part of, I don't know.
In another book, if I may interrupt, towards the end of Mirrors, Nemesis in the Mirror, which I originally called Mirrors Facing Mirrors, towards the end of that, the main character is discussing a conversion of his own, and he said he's no longer driven by the aesthetic ideal. Too bad for him and his girlfriend, who was murdered during that time, but now he's capable of loving, because he realized that until then he was just going from one to another. He wasn't in a relationship. And he didn't even say it that way, but you know, he said you always told me I don't have to explain everything to the audience, right?
Right.
I'm disgusting like that. I think I'm under obligation. I think I'm still teaching in junior high school.
It depends. It depends on
Yeah.
what depth it's relevant, I suppose.
It depends on, I want people to understand what I'm trying to say so that they don't just skim over it. I know people who
Right.
read my books and they'll see all that action. There's so much action in my books, am I right?
Yeah.
The Don and the Shaman, I mean, he goes from one killing thing to another, right?
Yeah.
There's always good stuff going on in there.
Yeah.
Everybody says they can't put it down. And that's all you can see if that's all you want to see. And
Yeah.
then you're puzzled by the ending. Why did he do that? Right? I don't want to mention that.
Well, that's part of, I mean, yeah, but that's part of the appeal of reading it as the reader, is trying to figure out what the character is valuing, what they're driven by, what they're possessed by, you know?
You know, the Don, he killed so many people. He was brilliant, genius, manipulator, super powerful person. He's going to become the most powerful man in the world. He was right on that doorstep, right at the end, right? So this is no minor league character. This is real big time guy. And he was very evil. He was not somebody that you ordinarily would want to identify with, right? And yet how many people, especially the first guy to read it, my good friend, who's Sicilian, never read a book in his life, read my book and said he couldn't put it down. I mentioned, I hope certain sections didn't bore you, said I never found a page that bored me. Which is really something, because at one point I have the shaman meet his wife and his mother-in-law. His wife and Gabriella, the one he really loves, because she befriended him during his bad time when he was a little kid. And so he fell in love with her, and he's still in love with her, but he's married to her daughter now. So they are on the east side, and I think I did it nicely. I took them to a place for their hair. I had the two bodyguards check everything out. Dialogue, well, good dialogue, the kind you'd expect. Lots of respect. Murderers, two murderers taking them around, okay? And then they go from there to a place, a little house where the woman cooks, and you have like maybe 2 or 3 tables, and you can have all Italian food. And so they go back to, in their memory, to Sicily, the two of the women. And then they get out of there and they look across the street. This is over on the east side, over the old, near the old Salvation Army place, in that area. And that's what I was picturing in my mind. And then they see across the street a yoga studio that's called Illumination. And so a couple of them go in, they put the old lady in the car, she's being guarded. You remember this, because I made a good joke. A yoga class was coming out. The young guy who's guarding the old lady by the limousine, he's standing over there, and he's a lady killer, handsome guy, dresses like a fashion plate all the time. He kills people too, but young, handsome guy, really loves the girls. And out comes this raven-haired beauty. He's gonna whistle, and then he looked at her, she looked up at him, and she smiled, he smiled, and a couple of minutes later, he had her telephone number. And I ended it with yoga. It was already making him feel better. I thought that was good. And then the ladies go in with Bruno, the big Bruno. He stands in the background against the wall, and the ladies sit with the yoga teacher, whose name is Shaman. Okay, and he becomes this guy, and he looks like he's 35. He's the same guy who looked like he was 35 years ago, and then before then too. And so it's a long story, but they finally get together and they start having these dialogues, and it becomes an internal dialogue. He's talking to him even before he meets him.
Right.
So it's full of, that juicy stuff.
Yeah.
And it's also just like, he's gonna get even. He goes to Sicily to kill the people that killed his parents. And my favorite one, it was when, and he does it with, real places. The Shrine of the Black Saint, everybody knows about that place. Well, now you do, in Sicily. And over there, he does a terrible thing. There's an amphitheater. I have a picture of it. You can actually see it. You plug it in, and you'll see a picture of it. There's the shrine right on the cliff, and then over here, there's an amphitheater where Plato and Aristotle talked to the Sicilians when they ran away from Athens. So, but my best part is when later on, after he finishes with the living one, he has to go find the grave of a dead one. He wants to make sure that he's dead.
Don't give it away. Don't give it away.
It's a great scene.
Read it.
Don't give it away. It's a great scene. Yeah, it's on Amazon. You can get it for like $2.99.
It's on. Oh, that's right. We put the Don and the
Yeah,
Shaman.
one person bought it.
The Don
And
and the Shaman. If you want to read it, recommend it. It's well written. By
Fun to
him.
read.
I wanted to close on the subject that we had started with, which was Stoicism and resistance to change and control mechanisms.
Wow. What do you do with the control mechanism? What are we supposed to do with it?
I suppose that the final thought that I have on it to this moment is, it's not like you're going to stop trying to impose will.
Right.
It's not like that's going to just cease to exist just because you recognize that you're trying to impose will. And I suppose, in a way, it's kind of, whatever you want to call it, the hand of the universe, the hand of God, whatever. Things are manifesting through and around all of us, whether or not we are actually having such an effect on it, as much as our egos would like us to believe.
Yeah, good, nice. May I offer a very practical suggestion at the very end to all the multitudes that are watching
Is
us?
it a challenge? Is it a...
It's not even a challenge, no, it's better than that. If you find that you can wake up from moment to moment, you realize what? That you're in a consciousness observing this, and this essentially is the same as some of the dreams you have at night. My dreams are just like this. There's nothing extraordinary about them. I can't even tell the difference anymore. But that's because I'm old. But if you can turn this into a lucid dream, I mean, you realize for a moment that you wake up to the realization that you are an ongoing consciousness, free, essentially free at that level. Free, condemned to be free, you can't help but go from one thing to another, okay? But if you realize that, just briefly, give yourself a reward. No, you don't have to eat a chocolate bar. Just take a deep breath through your nose. It's good for you.
Yeah, I suppose that is the best damn reward that you can have.
Yeah, just
Everything
take a
else
deep
is
breath.
just impulse.
And how many times in the course of a day can you do that? And it might become like, hey,
Come up for air. Yeah, that
Yeah.
sound good?
yeah,
Come
good,
up for air
good.
from the depths of the bullshit on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Leave us some questions and comments. Let us know how this audio is, because we did get a new mic and I am using it now.
You know, I'm still not satisfied, but other people say it's okay.
Soon I'll update the video quality on things.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
I'll use my newer phone. Very high production values here. Bye guys.